We all know the quiet dread of an awkward family reunion, but imagine that standard anxiety multiplied by a factor of 400 in the form of an advancing private militia. The year is 1739 BC, and Jacob is finally on a collision course with his estranged brother, Esau. His small traveling party is vastly outnumbered by an approaching military force. Jacob is a shepherd. His resume consists of tending flocks and managing livestock, not orchestrating desert warfare against highly trained mercenaries. He finds himself in a complete tactical vacuum. Backed into a corner by his own history, Jacob is a deeply anxious man, facing a war he cannot outrun. Forced to improvise a defense against imminent slaughter, Jacob executes a deeply cynical, panicked military deployment, using the only literal troops he has on hand, his own family. This tactical map plops Jacob's solitary position at the bottom against the enemy force above him. He divides his wives, handmaids, and children into distinct units, based entirely on a cold, calculated hierarchy of expendability. First, he establishes the vanguard. The handmaids and their children are ordered to the absolute front lines. The brutal logic here is simple. These individuals serve as human shock absorbers, assigned to take the first hits and buy Jacob a few precious minutes. Next comes the middle infantry. Leah and her children are stationed directly behind the handmaids, designated as acceptable secondary losses if the front line collapses. Finally, we reach the rear guard. Rachel, his obvious favorite wife, along with her son Joseph, are placed at the very back of the formation, kept safely out of harm's way. The text outlines this arrangement without apology. Jacob weaponized his blatant household favoritism, arranging his least-liked family members as a literal wall of human shields. With his human barricade firmly in place, Jacob steps out from the safety of the rear to take point and initiate contact with the militia. He opts for a highly evasive, sweat-drenched approach. Verse 3 details him bowing face down to the dirt 7 consecutive times as he slowly grovels toward the troops. Then comes the terrifying moment of impact. Esau breaks formation and sprints aggressively directly at the bowing Jacob. But instead of drawing a sword, Esau tackles his brother in a hug. He falls on Jacob's neck, kisses him, and the two men begin to weep. A ruthless, highly calculated military defense is rendered instantly useless. 2 grown men sob loudly in the desert, while 400 heavily armed mercenaries stand around watching awkwardly. The prolific 18th century biblical commentator Matthew Henry zeroed in on this jarring pivot. He asked exactly how a hardened warlord was so suddenly mollified into a weeping brother. Henry points to a core theological principle found in Proverbs 16:7. It states, "When a man's ways please the Lord, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him." This illustrates what we might call the providence paradox. The threat had already been entirely neutralized by divine grace long before Jacob ever drew up his frantic battle plans. Looking back at Jacob's cynical meat shield strategy through this lens reveals how thoroughly redundant his actions were. All of his morally questionable calculations solved a problem that no longer existed. He survived the encounter, but now he faces a uniquely terrible domestic situation. He has to spend the rest of his life explaining to his wives and handmaids exactly why he ranked their value by expendability. It is easy to exhaust ourselves over-engineering elaborate defenses for disastrous worst-case scenarios, completely blind to the possibility that the universe might simply greet us with grace.